Today, we're unpacking the incredible 30-year journey of how an adopted kid built a $2 trillion empire, literally from the passenger seat of a car. This is the story of Amazon.
And this is where that journey has led. $1.2 million. That's how much money Amazon makes in revenue every single minute. It's an absolutely mind-boggling number, and it's the result of a relentless, methodical, and, let's be honest, often brutal strategy that completely reshaped the world we live in.
So how on earth does one person build a machine of this scale? Well, the answer goes way beyond just business tactics. To really get the empire, you have to first understand the man who dreamed it up, a guy whose ambitions were, from the very beginning, literally out of this world. All right, let's dive into part one. You see, the whole Amazon story doesn't kick off with some grand vision for online shopping. Nope. It starts with a kid's fascination for the stars, an unbelievable personal drive, and one single staggering number that changed absolutely everything.
So who was this guy? Well, Jeff Bezos was what you'd call a brilliant and, frankly, pretty intense overachiever. He was adopted by a Cuban immigrant, Mike Bezos, who gave him his last name, and his ambition, it was huge and clear from a very young age. I mean, in his high school graduation speech, he was already talking about building space hotels. He goes on to ace a double major at Princeton, and by the time he's just 30 years old, he's already a senior vice president at a Wall Street hedge fund.
And then came the number that changed it all, 2,300%. In 1994, that was the annual growth rate of the internet. For Bezos, this wasn't just some trend. He saw it as a new law of physics, a kind of gravitational force pulling the future into existence. And he knew he had to be a part of it.
So this led to a massive choice. He had a fantastic high-paying job on Wall Street. He goes to his boss and says he's quitting to go sell books online. His boss basically told him, that sounds like a great idea for someone who doesn't already have a good job. But for Bezos, the real risk wasn't leaving his job. It was ignoring that 2,300% growth figure. To him, the choice was logical. It was obvious.
So what'd he do? He and his wife, Mackenzie, quit their jobs, hopped in their old Chevy Blazer, and just started driving west. I mean, this is the ultimate startup story. While Mackenzie drove, Jeff was right there in the passenger seat, hammering out the business plan that would become Amazon. He got started with just 10 grand from his parents' retirement savings. The company's first name was Cadabra, like abracadabra, but that got dropped real quick when his lawyer misheard it as cadaver. Not exactly great branding, right? So he settled on Amazon, the biggest river in the world, for what he planned to be the world's biggest store. From a garage filled with desks made out of cheap doors, the mission was simple and brutal. Get big fast. This wasn't just some catchy slogan, it was the entire strategy. It meant speed over perfection, it meant urgency over profit, and it meant relentless, non-stop expansion over everything else. The goal wasn't just to be the best bookstore. It was to get so big, so fast, that no one could ever catch up. And you know what? It worked. Within just a few weeks, Amazon was shipping books to all 50 states and over 40 countries. They actually installed a bell in the office that would ring every time they made a sale. They had to turn it off. It just never stopped ringing. But this incredible early success was headed straight for a massive, industry-wide storm.
And then the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. All that optimism from the 90s, gone, replaced by pure fear. And Wall Street analysts gave the company a new nickname, Amazon.toast, because they were sure it was finished.
The stock price didn't just dip, it absolutely cratered. It plummeted from over $100 a share down to just $6. Headlines were screaming, Amazon.bomb, and analysts were predicting bankruptcy was just months away. Billions of dollars in value just gone. The company was on the brink. This was it. This was the moment that would either kill the company or forge it into something unbreakable. And while all its dot-com peers, remember Pets.com, eToys, they all vanished. Amazon somehow survived. Bezos didn't panic. He just went cold and surgical, slashing costs and streamlining everything. The crash didn't kill Amazon. It made it tougher, leaner, and way more dangerous. So after the crash, Bezos rebuilt the company with a brand new obsession. Build fast, scale even harder, and launch what you could only call kill shots. Innovations so disruptive, they would redefine not just Amazon, but entire industries. First up, Amazon Prime. When it launched, competitors thought it was financial suicide. Free 2-day shipping? How could they ever make money? But see, Bezos knew Prime wasn't really a shipping program. It was a loyalty program. It was a psychological trap. Once you paid that annual fee, you felt like you had to get your money's worth. And just like that, it changed how you shop forever. So what do they do next? They go after the very thing that made them famous in the first place, the book itself. The first Kindle, honestly, it looked pretty clunky. But it didn't matter what it looked like. It fundamentally changed what a book was, replacing paper and ink with pixels, and in the process, it just crushed traditional publishing models and bookstores.
But the biggest revolution, the move that made Amazon a true giant, happened almost by accident behind the scenes. See, to handle its own insane growth, Amazon had to build a world-class computing infrastructure. And then they had a brilliant idea. Why don't we just rent it out to other people? And that became Amazon Web Services, or AWS. Today, it powers huge chunks of the internet. We're talking Netflix, the CIA, even Amazon's own competitors. They are literally paying rent to their biggest rival.
And if you want to understand the ruthless efficiency that drove all this, it really comes down to this one quote from Bezos: "Your margin is my opportunity." This wasn't just a clever saying, it was a threat. It was the entire strategy. Use their massive scale and data to enter a new industry, undercut everybody on price, and just dominate. By the late 2010s, Amazon wasn't just a company anymore. It was an empire. And its founder had transformed right along with it, evolving into something else entirely: the final boss.
I mean, just look at the transformation. Gone was the awkward, nerdy guy with that signature goofy laugh. The new Bezos was bald, he was jacked, and he carried himself with this quiet confidence of someone who had literally bent reality to his will. Less startup founder, more final boss of capitalism.
And the empire's tentacles started reaching everywhere. They bought Whole Foods, turning grocery stores into distribution hubs. He personally bought the Washington Post. Amazon started to dominate entertainment with Twitch and Prime Video, our smart homes with Alexa, and even began moving into healthcare. But with this enormous scale came enormous scrutiny, over everything from warehouse working conditions to accusations of being a monopolist.
In 2020, as all this regulatory pressure was hitting its peak, Bezos gets called to testify before Congress. And then, just a few months later, almost out of nowhere, he announces he's stepping down as CEO. No big scandal, no crisis, he just quietly handed the keys to Andy Jassy, the guy who built AWS, and walked away from the day-to-day.
So what does the final boss of capitalism do for an encore? He pivots. He goes right back to that dream he talked about in his high school graduation speech. His main focus became Blue Origin, the rocket company he'd been quietly funding for years, with the stated goal of eventually moving all heavy industry off-planet to preserve the Earth.
And this is the final, absolutely mind-bending part of the story. For the kid who dreamed of space hotels, Earth was never the endgame. What if Amazon, the $2 trillion everything store, what if it wasn't his masterpiece? What if it was just the launch pad? The machine he had to build to fund the infrastructure for humanity's next chapter. It leaves you wondering, what comes next?